Good afternoon. If you're like Margaret and I, these last couple weeks of being together a lot have really led to some interesting communications, both verbally and non-verbally. And it got us thinking, it's tricky. The more time you spend communicating, the more time you have to miscommunicate and misunderstand each other. And we've had a couple stressful moments where we've had to step back and reflect and then even revisit the situations. So today we want to talk to you about some of the process that we take to evaluate our communication and try to make our relationship going in the right direction.
Yeah. So just to give you some background. So since this whole thing started, I've been out of work for about 3 weeks now. And in the beginning, my first week off of work was when they were trying to figure out everything with the church. So Jason was on the phone and he had a lot of meetings, and he'd come home and he'd be exhausted. And he's an introvert, I'm an extrovert. So I went from being able to interact with new people every night and having social time at my work to all suddenly having no social time. So it was really stressful on both of us. And I just really felt like I needed to give grace and space during that time. And that's something that continues to come to my mind, is just giving each other grace and space. Because sometimes you need a little extra grace and sometimes you need a little extra space. So that's something that I've been going through during this time.
So I want to reflect on a passage from Joshua just to kind of help illustrate the point. And in Joshua 22, when Joshua speaks to the tribes of Gad and Reuben and the half tribe of Manasseh, he tells them, hey, look, you helped us take a lot of land in the promised land, and I am blessing you, I am releasing you to go back to the land that we already conquered, that was designated as your territory. Your obligation right now to us has been met. And so they're like, great, here we go. And they head back for the land that they'd already taken. When they get about halfway there, or somewhere along the journey, they decide that they're going to set up an altar. And that seems all fine and dandy, but the other Israelite tribes don't know that. And they get word that this altar has been set up. And they know two things. One, God said, you will not set up an altar anywhere other than I tell you to make sacrifices. And second, Israel knew that this wasn't one of those times. So they had a problem, and they were ready to go to war over it. They took a band of the leaders, and they went armed, and they confronted these tribes. And they were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's okay, let us explain before you kill us. And they're like, all right, go ahead, explain. And they said, look, we weren't setting this up as a place to sacrifice to God. We were setting this up as a monument to remind us, so that X number of years down the road, our ancestors, or even ourselves, don't forget what we were a part of and what we're still supposed to be a part of, with helping when and where we can in regards to taking the promised land.
Yeah. And
the rest of the Israelite tribes are like, oh, okay, well, we didn't know that. Would have been nice, one of those kinds of things, which I'm sure if you're like us, or even if you're not, you might have had some of those kinds of moments. You're ready to go to fisticuffs over it, and it's like, wait, what happened here? So here, even in early Israelite history, you see a major miscommunication and them addressing it. And that's a key part of it, is addressing the issue.
Yeah. So as you find a new normal with your new routines, just remember you're more likely to collide with one another. You're more likely to have things out of place, or you'll make casual decisions without consulting the other people in your family or your spouse, and you're going to make assumptions even about little things. And so it's important to keep communicating during this time. And so I'll let you take it from there.
So to kind of bring it all together, we want to tell you 6 simple things that we have been focusing on and doing in order to smooth over our miscommunications and misunderstandings. 6 things. First one being,
spend time with God. That's very important. Spend time talking with Him and, of course, listening to Him. The whole grace and space thing came to my mind when I was frustrated and I was praying. It's very important to keep that connection between you and the Lord during this time, because everybody's kind of in a funk right now and finding new routines, and it's hard. So keep God first.
Yeah, and even in when these things are happening, making space, she's saying, to go and set that time up with God so that you can reflect with Him and talk to Him. Point number 2 is that you want to humbly, kindly, graciously, gently, however you want to say it, you want to bring the issue up. You want to drag it into the light. You want to say, hey, look, we're the ones involved in this, and something didn't go as planned. Let's revisit it. For some of you and for some situations, that moment's going to be very quick after the initial interaction. For other more major situations, you're going to need to make sure that you have some distance between point A and point B so that everybody can kind of relax a little bit and reflect.
Number 3 is just ask and discuss with everyone involved what they could have had better, what y'all could have done better, and of course what you could have done better. It's very important to evaluate yourself in that situation, because it's very easy to say, okay, you miscommunicated, you said it wrong, and it's sometimes nobody's really at fault, it's just a miscommunication. And so you can always improve the way you communicate during this time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's not that someone did something wrong. Yeah. It's possible that it's just that misunderstanding piece. That can be really big, and sometimes just realizing that all around can really diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
But point number 4 is that we want to make sure that we're evaluating the circumstances in our life for everyone involved. It's different from point number 3 that Margaret talked about, just in the fact that it's not looking at how you acted, it's looking at what's influencing how you're acting.
Yeah.
So evaluate your circumstances. What are the needs? Does someone involved need a break? Does someone involved need a nap? I mean, the list could go on and on. For Margaret, she needs a nap regularly. She's growing a baby. So even if she gets 8 hours, a 2-hour nap is really preferred for her on a regular daily basis. And I can't really speak to that because I've never tried to grow a baby, so I don't know how draining it is. But I take her word for it, which is probably the best situation or the best way to approach that. So a small story to kind of help illustrate this. We went for a bike ride a few Thursdays ago, and we went on the rail trail. And on our way back, we'd gone a decent distance, a couple of miles, and I'm towing Emery in a trailer behind me. And we live at the bottom of a pretty decent sized hill, at least for people in our shape. And we were a street and a parking lot away from the bottom of that hill. And Margaret hollers at me from behind, hey, I'm going to need a break before we go up that hill. And I said, yep, okay, got it. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, all we got to do is cross this street that's a couple feet ahead and then go to the parking lot and there we can rest. But that's not what Margaret was thinking. And so I get to the street ready to cross and cars stop for me, and I turn around and Margaret's a decent way back walking next to her bike, and she is not happy. I said I needed a break. And I'm like, oh boy, cars stopped looking at me. Do I wave the cars off? It was just really uncomfortable for me. And I was just like, I didn't do anything wrong. You said a break, you didn't say when. And that got me thinking, she may not have specified, but I didn't ask. I assumed, she assumed, we had this major miscommunication, and in the stress of everything, that was a day where I'd made a ton of phone calls. So I wasn't on my A game, she wasn't on her A game, because she had just spent all day at home being mom, and it really was kind of a perfect storm. And so we just said, you know what, we both could have done this better. Neither of us did anything wrong. It just got awkward and uncomfortable and frustrating because we weren't on the same page. And that required us to reevaluate our circumstances. Okay, so probably wasn't a good idea to go on a long bike ride when I was this worn out from making phone calls, or when she was worn out from this. We had to evaluate the circumstances surrounding that.
Yeah. And of course, as needed, you need to apologize and forgive. And again, number five, sorry. Yep, number 5, sorry. And, just apologize and forgive as you need to. And just remember, we're all in this together. We're all kind of stuck at home. And sometimes you need to extend a little grace to your spouse, and sometimes you need to extend space, and vice versa. So keep that in mind as you're being stuck together and in quarantine and being cooped up in the house.
And point number 6, keep communicating. Find a time, whether it's a set time or whether you talk about when and that time changes. For us, we really try to communicate at night, because I've had time to relax from my day. She's had time to wind down from hers. She's had a partner for the last few hours. And so we go to bed and we're like, okay, we've got probably an hour before we're really, really tired. Let's talk. How was your day?
Yeah.
Good. Mine was this. And we hash it out. And it's a great time for us to say, you know what? You remember a few hours ago when I did this? I think you thought I meant it this way, but I didn't. I'm sorry. It just creates the space to be humble, to be intentional, and to smooth things over and make sure that we're not going to bed upset with each other.
Yeah.
And for some of you, you might need to evaluate how that works for you on a different relationship level, whether it's to your kids or to your in-laws or to coworkers that you might be on video conferences with, anyone that you're communicating with in this season of coronavirus excessively, you could be miscommunicating with. And so it's really good to be evaluating that.
Yeah.
I hope this is helpful. Have a great weekend.